And this is well documented. There are countless people who have had these spiritual experiences that have led to their recovery, that have just dramatically altered their state of being, their understanding, and shifted their perspective in an instant. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to my podcast. How's everyone doing? So happy you're here to have another in-depth, interesting conversation. And I think you're going to be surprised by some of what you hear today, because this is not stuff that a lot of people know, actually. Like, people don't sit around talking about addiction often. But I figured, since we're in an addiction crisis, we may as well expand on it a little bit, because I think it's really relevant information. And it's also interesting. It's extremely interesting, because it does not involve a superficial solution. And you guys know that I'm all about an effective solution, because I don't believe that there's any human problem that we need to be defeated by. I really stand by that. And I'm sure there's all kinds of objections that people could throw up. And what about this? What about that? But I stand in that. So last week we talked about the mind, body, soul, threefold illness of addiction. I broke those components down a little bit. And mainly we discussed why an inadequate and insufficient understanding of the problem really leads to inadequate, insufficient solutions on the whole. And how, despite some, I have known, met, and heard of some amazing practitioners, doctors, who do get it and do really understand the condition and are able to point people in the right direction when they know that they're not able to be specifically helpful for that, instead of just being like, oh yeah, let me fix it, I have the cure for you. And science has not been shown to fix this problem yet. I don't know at what point it will, unless it gets with a higher program, like a much higher program, because science is limited. And this solution that's needed defies reason and human understanding. It involves a spiritual experience, like we talked about last week. So I want to talk about the underpinnings, the foundation of that, and give that a little bit of street cred, if you will, instead of just people saying it and you hearing it and being like, okay, I'm just supposed to believe that, right? Even though plenty of people have had that experience and can attest to it, it can be helpful to know some of the stuff that I'm going to talk about. So I want to talk a little bit about the variety of solutions that we go to, that we reach for when we want to make a change, and how oftentimes those tools, while many of them are extremely helpful, and I would even say crucial for your well-being and some aspect of your health, they're oftentimes not the sole solution. They are not the cure, in other words. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And I also want to talk about how hypnosis is extremely supportive in recovery work, not as the sole tool or sole solution. I differ from a lot of hypnotists and hypnotherapists on this. I will say I will support you in this. But if I determine through what someone shares with me that they could potentially be addict or alcoholic, I refer them other places, and I say this work can be really powerfully supportive for you. So when somebody's having a spiritual experience, it has been shown that beta waves decrease and alpha and theta waves increase, and that is the same natural state of mind that you're accessing in hypnosis. So you can enter a very deeply spiritual state of being with intention in hypnosis, in working with the subconscious. And this can be really helpful for people, especially for addicts who usually have severed trust across the board. And oftentimes the spiritual component or aspect of 12-step can feel really unapproachable for them. And so this can be sort of a gateway and a way to access and have that experience. Not that you need hypnosis to have a powerful experience in 12-step. I'm not saying that, but it very much does support and is in alignment with that work, because you are accessing those deeper states where you're needing to have an experience. And the spiritual experience is not something, like I said, that you can rationalize or just think your way into. You really have to just experience it. And this is well documented. There are countless people who have had these spiritual experiences that have led to their recovery, that have just dramatically altered their state of being, their understanding, and shifted their perspective in an instant. And the same thing can happen in hypnosis. I was working with a session, in a conversational session, and they literally had a really powerful transformation 30 minutes in, where the old paradigm fell to the ground. It was like it was just this illusion and the structure they'd been living in for a long time. It was like it just shattered and fell to the ground, and a whole new perspective really came into view. And that's what happens for people when they're able to bridge that gap from that addiction into a state where they're free and neutral, right? So when somebody doesn't get free and neutral, they oftentimes keep reaching for other solutions. So that experience has to be cultivated and it has to evolve. So that stays like your bread and butter. Like that's where it's at, and that's what feeds you. And Carl Jung actually was profoundly influential, indirectly, but profoundly influential nonetheless, in early AA and his conversations with Bill W., who's the co-founder of AA. So Carl Jung, by the way, is the founder of analytical psychology. He is the guy of the 20th century as far as understanding, like the greatest mind understanding and bringing light to the human psyche, the pioneer in these concepts like individuation, archetypes, introversion versus extroversion, the collective unconscious, like big stuff, okay? And he treated this guy, he was a Swiss psychologist and psychiatrist, and there's this guy named Roland Hazard. Roland Hazard, they had not been founded yet. The Oxford group was operative, which preceded AA. And this was this guy that could not get sober no matter what he did. He had endless amounts of money. He decided to fly himself to Switzerland and be treated by Dr. Carl Jung. So that happened. And his treatment failed. It did not work. And he went back to the doctor and he said, please tell me what's up, like be straight with me. And Carl Jung told him that he has never seen an alcoholic of his variety recover. He's going to have this experience that is this spiritual phenomena that is an entire psychic change, a spiritual awakening, or he was hopeless. And by the way, this guy said, well, I'm a religious guy. I'm going to go try religion. And he's like, yeah, that doesn't work either. And so here's the thing, right? Like people are going to take issue with this. And I understand that. But you have to understand that just to know and to try and abide by some sort of rigid dogma, not saying there's anything even wrong with your dogma. There's not a criticism of that. But it's like just to try and live by that according to those rules is not sufficient enough to produce an experience in the soul to overcome this deep need, and it's a deep spiritual need. So he came up with this concept that he called spirita contra spiritum, which is Latin for spirit against spirit. And it is basically needing to seek a higher and elevated experience in order to combat the false spiritual experience that one is seeking from these substances. So this was like the word he gave this guy, and the guy ended up connecting with somebody else who connected with Bill W. Anyways, it's a whole story. It's the beginning and the birth of AA. And there were many other people with documented profound spiritual experiences. Bill W. was one of them, where he had this really powerful, unbelievable, like what they would call a timeline shift, a quantum leap, where it was like he stepped from living one way into a new way of existence and being in an instant. So this is possible, but people doubt this and science can't explain it. So therein lies a lot of people's criticism and rejection of this idea because they don't get it. They can't wrap their minds around it. The other person who was profoundly influential in AA was William James. William James is considered the father of American psychology, another great scientific mind, extremely revered in the medical and psychological community. And he wrote a book called Variety of Spiritual Experiences, and it really explains and acknowledges the different kinds of spiritual experiences and the profound nature of that type of spiritual experience that I just explained. So these are these doctors and these great minds that were extremely successful, and they basically had the humility to say, Dr. Silkworth was another one. He ran hospitals for trying to rehabilitate these people that he saw suffering and struggling, these alcoholics mainly, and with no success until the birth of AA. And then he was totally sold on it from what he saw and the profound changes that took place. So I just want to talk about some other tools that we can use that add and really enrich, but are not the sole solution. So I've heard all kinds of examples. I've had all kinds of desperate short-term solution, quick fix reaches that, while on the surface there's nothing wrong with them, they're not sustainable and they're not solutions. For example, like there's this guy I follow on Instagram sometimes, and he's like this self-professed pretty venal guy, says he's very addictive and struggles in certain areas of his life. He's like, okay, I just need to counteract this intensity. And he talks about doing watermelon fasts and sort of these more extreme ways to create a counterbalance. And it's like, okay, I got you. That's great for the short term, but that's not sustainable unless you plan on being on watermelon fast for the rest of your life. And that might not bode so well, because I don't know what your life expectancy will be if you do that. And so, you know, it's not the solution, right? Because he's still got himself to deal with after the water fast once that dopamine kick or whatever he's getting from that wears off. And same with a lot of these other short-term solutions, self-help solutions, just quick fix, sort of take a magic pill approach. It doesn't work. And there's a reason why so many other 12-step programs have come into existence, because the problem of cross addiction, and being sober doesn't mean you're free, right? And a lot of times these addictions get transferred to food, to sex, to work, to overexercising. I mean, there's Debtors Anonymous. I mean, the list is endless. And that's because we usually reach for a solution that's inadequate until we're really ready to get down and like do the thing. And that's, I would say, why there's a pretty low recovery rate, is because not a lot of people want to do the thing that they can't see, that they have to experience, that doesn't involve reaching for insta relief. But having said that, while you're in that process, it's really important to do things that support your overall physical, mind, body, soul health. So like hobbies, exercise, these things are important. Again, alone, they're not the solution. Like, I love hoop dancing. I love it. I find so much joy. It's a creative outlet for me. I think accessing and tapping creativity and authenticity is really, really critical. I think accessing joy in those higher states of being and creativity are absolutely vital and necessary. But even in that, we're talking about purpose stuff there. And on that path of stepping into purpose, we're going to be confronted, and that's going to be challenging, and we're going to need a higher solution in that. So, any way you look at this, it's like it's not the way out, but it is a necessary tool. Oh, by the way, on the dance thing, there's an awesome study, and I don't know if you guys have seen it, but it's been floating around for like the last year. And it's the British Medical Journal, and they did meta-analysis around dance being the most effective exercise for reducing depression, and it outperformed yoga, walking, strength training, and SSRIs. So it outperformed antidepressants for depression and some of these other issues. And, addicts are usually pretty complex, and it's not uncommon for an addict to struggle with depression. So really, really important, helpful tools. Part of the physical piece, like we have to address every aspect of it. And I can tell you, for me, like being able to channel energy, open creativity, that stuff is life-giving for me. But if I'm hula hooping on the beach and a tsunami comes along, well, it's not like the tsunami is going to be like, oh, let me just go around her. She's having fun hula hooping. That's not how it works. Like, I have to get to higher ground. Obviously, the metaphor being there, the Tsunami being the force of addiction and that obsession and that spiritual component. Another really common one that I see, a real reach, which is pretty desperate, and I see it a lot with people in early recovery in treatment centers. And usually this is when people have the means to afford this, or sometimes well-meaning family members or parents will supply this for their kid that they're so desperately wanting them to get well. If they can afford it, they will get them a team, and they have everyone on this team, from a trainer to a masseuse to the neurofeedback person to the psychologist to the therapist to the life coach to the security guard. Okay. And it's like, short of putting them in a straitjacket, they're doing everything they can, right? And that's not really freedom. That's not a solution. That's a temporary hold you back. I was scrolling on Instagram the other day, or maybe it was TikTok, and there was this girl, and she was like, does anyone have any suggestions of hobbies? I've been sober 3 months and I really want to pick up. And I just responded and I was like, unless you consider like seeking the spiritual way of life a hobby, no, I don't. Other people were like, I like cooking. I'm like, well, the person that's saying that like doesn't know the force and power of what they're dealing with. So, that's a really well-meaning, nice suggestion, right? But it, like, cooking and crafting isn't going to get you a spiritual experience. It's a way to enjoy life. But if you're not abstinent and present, then you can't really enjoy those things anyways. There's a lot of interesting research, bodies of research around specifically studying therapy, mainly CBT, talk therapy, and 12-step recovery. And Project Match, which is the largest U.S. alcohol treatment trial, looked at meeting attendance. It strongly predicted better abstinence outcomes. Those who went deeper into the steps, especially service, which is a big part of 12-step, helping others, had the strongest long-term results, even at the 10-year follow-ups. The Cochrane Review, which is 27 studies at 10,000 plus participants, looked at AA and 12-step facilitation and how it outperformed or equaled other treatments at 12 months, 24 months, 36 months. And honestly, when you're looking at the 12, 24, and 36-month studies, like, that's not that impressive to me. That's not long-term. When you consider the lifespan of a human, that's very short term. So I'm more interested in what was able to be sustained after 10 years or after the 30-year study, right? And some of these studies, while they looked at meeting attendance, it compared with maybe other kind of support groups or therapy and that connection with another person and that honesty. But the meeting attendance aspect of recovery is only a part of the puzzle. It's a critical, crucial part of it, right? Because the fellowship and that connection and community is so important. But the real work is in the application of the step work that 12-step offers. And when this was in play and they were studying this alongside talk therapy, it outperformed. And in the long term, that's what showed long-term most sustainable results were with the people who stuck with that program. And what I really noticed is people who stick around, get abstinent or whatever, and really prioritize their well-being, and they get neutral. Like, they really get neutral because they're really applying solution versus just distracting themselves with other addictions. They end up addressing other aspects of their health. And because of that potential for cross-addiction, a lot of them, not everybody is this complex, but a lot of them do end up in other 12-step rooms because they recognize the immense value of that support. And it just works. Like, it's not like people are volunteering for more work for no reason. They're doing it because they get relief. And that's so important. So there's quick fix products, there's miracle cures, there's, people have different claims. It would be nice if a supplement did the trick, if a pill fixed a pill problem. I don't think that's how it works. There's a doctor, not a doctor, he's a scientist, and he's pretty well known. And he was doing a TED Talk. And I'm not going to call him out, but he's a smart guy. He was making the connection between, reward pathways, dopamine, the gut connection. And he was saying, basically, take this supplement, take this probiotic, and we will eliminate addiction. And like, okay, buddy. Oh, by the way, and then he was like, here's where you buy my product. So that's a little suspect to me. It's also just clearly an inadequate understanding and solution for somebody that's really dealt with the intensity of addiction. So I don't know what to say about that. And then there's guys like Andrew Huberman who goes deep into the neuroscience and mental health and the physical aspect of how we can support healthy and leverage healthy dopamine levels and raise our baseline and all this. And he does some great talks. He's definitely worth listening to. And those are tools that I have utilized, and they are extremely helpful to me. I'm so grateful for them, that we have this information, that we know this stuff. So I think the science is really compelling and really important, and is the thing that can help someone bridge the gap also sometimes. I mean, if it wasn't for that information, I don't think I'd be cold plunging 3 days a week, but it has helped me immensely, helped shift my mindset, and helped kind of get me out of some ruts before where I've needed it, grounding, early morning sunlight, and just having an understanding of some of this stuff and how to better support myself are really helpful tools. So I just really wanted to bring some sanity and balance to this conversation and just look at it through a few different lenses, and, really also speak to the deeper underlying need that is accessible and necessary. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. Tune in next time, because we are going to switch gears here and really go down a different rabbit hole. So I'm excited about that. Have a great 2 weeks. Talk to you guys soon. Thank you for tuning in to the May Be Mindful podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us grow and improve. For more information, resources, and exclusive content, visit our website at maybemindful.com, or go ahead and follow us over on Instagram at maybemindful. If you enjoyed this week's episode, please give me a follow, screenshot the episode, and go ahead and tag me until next week when I bring you another thought-provoking and inspiring topic. Until then,